Shalom Chaverim. Today we have double portion, Tazria-Metzora. We're going to talk about it together with several people, but mainly the Rambam and Moreh Nevochim, or a guide for the perplexed. Also a little bit of a Baal Shem Tov and a little bit of Rav Kook. And it's going to be cool. So let's begin. So, the main topic I want to talk about today is the idea of hashgacha. Okay, now I wondered many times how to translate the word hashgacha. The most common translation is providence, okay? And really it's when we talk about divine providence or divine supervision. However, this translation is a bit problematic, and it's problematic because the word providence, which comes from Latin, actually two words in Latin, pro, which means ahead, and vedere, which means to see, implies some sort of a planning ahead, or if you will, a divine plan. Whereas hashgacha comes from the root shin gimel chet, which is the root for watching over someone. Lashgiach al mish is to watch, literally watch over someone. So in a sense, the difference between providence and hashgacha is the difference between the idea that there is a divine plan for humans and between the idea that there is a constant real-time watching over humans, which is what hashgacha means. So Jewish tradition differentiates between two types of hashgacha, which are hashgacha pratit and hashgacha klalit. Hashgacha pratit translates to personal or individual supervision, meaning the supervision that each and every one of us receive. And hashgacha klalit is a collective supervision or a general supervision. So if there's a general watching over humanity as a whole. But today I want to focus more on hashgacha pratit, on the personal or private supervision. But before we get too deep into it, let's look a little bit of our double portion, which is Tazria-Metzora. So these are two portions that deal almost entirely with skin diseases and really everything about skin diseases. So how to recognize them, how to know if someone is inflicted, then quarantine procedures, then sorts of treatment, and then, you know, of course, a path for healing and for returning eventually to the community. And a lot of our commentators wondered about why in the middle of the book of Leviticus there is a break to talk for a whole entire two portions about skin diseases. So one of the most known and famous interpretations comes from the Chafetz Chaim, who basically, based on Chazal, or based on, you know, our sages, pushed forward the idea that skin diseases were a manifestation of the Lashon Hara, or the evil tongue, right? So it's some sort of a physical manifestation for spreading rumors and gossips and slander. But today I want to focus on something else entirely with regards to skin diseases, and that actually ties to the idea of hashgacha pratit, of personal supervision. And for that, there's a funny midrash from Midrash Tanchuma, brings the following story, and I will read to you the English translation of the story from Midrash Tanchuma on Tazria. Okay? So it goes like this. There's a story about a certain priest who examined leprosy spots. When he became poor, he wanted to go abroad. He called his wife and said to her, "Because people used to come to me to show their leprosy spots, it is hard for me to leave them. Rather, come and let me teach you so that you may examine the leprosy spots. If you see a person's hair with its follicle dried up, you will know that such a person is stricken. Because for each and every hair, the Holy One, blessed be He, has created its own separate follicle from which it drinks. If its follicle dries up, the hair dries up." His wife said to him, "But surely, if For each and every hair, the Holy One, blessed be He, has created its own separate follicle from which it drinks. In your case, since you're a human being with so many hairs on you and with your children being supported by you, is it not all the more certain that the Holy One, blessed be He, will summon support for you? Therefore, she did not allow him to go abroad. Okay, so this entertaining story is actually talking about hashgacha pratit, about personal supervision. So what this priest's wife understanding, but what the priest tells her, it says just as much as every single hair on our head has its source of life, the source of where it drinks from, and it really says drinks, right? Ma'ayan, it says in the Midrash, the actual follicle. Just so every human being has their own source that constantly provides for them. So if we all have a source that constantly provides for us, she concluded that our husband doesn't need to go far away or go abroad to find that support, because it's with him at every time, constantly, and will provide for him and for his family. Now, the late professor, who, as some of you already know, I'm a fan of Yeshayahu Leibovitz, used to say, when it comes to people who believe in hashgacha pratit, who believes that there's constantly watch over them, he used to say, well, God is not a city parking controller, and it's not a DMV clerk, and God is not an IRS agent. Basically, you have a big problem if you think that God has nothing better to do but to make sure that a parking spot's open for you exactly when you need it, right? Leibovitz wrote about it in an entertaining way, but it's important to remember that Leibovitz was a Rambamist. So basically, he was a follower of the thought of Rambam, of Maimonides, and so it's really worth it to look at really what the Rambam had to say about hashgacha pratit. And the Rambam's approach to hashgacha is a little complex, but it is fascinating. So I'm going to read to you from the source here from Moreh Nevuchim. And this is, by the way, the third volume, okay, of Moreh Nevuchim. The chapter here is chapter 17, or Perek Yud Zayin, where it really the main chapter which talks about hashgacha, if you are interested. הבן לדעתי עד תומה, כי איני מאמין שמשהו נעלם ממנו התעלה ואיני מייחס לו אין אונים. אלא אני מאמין שההשגחה הולכת אחר השכל ודבקה בו. So he basically prefaces it and says, please don't misunderstand me. By saying what I'm about to say, I don't think that God doesn't have the ability to see everything. I don't think God is helpless or is limited in any way. However, I believe, אני מאמין שההשגחה הולכת אחר השכל ודבקה בו. I believe that supervision is tied to the intellect. This is very important. משום שההשגחה אינה אלא ממשכיל, וכזה שהוא שכל בתכלית השלמות שאין שלמות אחריה. ואם כן, כל מי שיגיע אליו משהו מאותו שפע, לפי מידת השכל שהגיע אליו, תגיע אליו ההשגחה. זוהי הדעה תואמת לדעתי את המושכל ואת לשונות התורה. So what Rambam is saying here is that supervision is tied to the intellect, basically nature itself is not supervised, and that includes animals. So the Rambam, of course, was influenced by Aristotle, and so he believed, like Aristotle, that yes, there is a creator of nature, but once nature has been created, the natural laws act on their own without supervision, and that includes animals. Aristotle also said that includes people. But the Rambam disagrees with him on this point and said, no, people are supervised because they have intellect. And in fact, the more intellect a person has, the more supervision they get, okay? So the level of supervision ties to the level of intellect. And he says it's basically already written in the Torah, for example, that the wicked are not supervised or are less supervised. And to give an example, and this is actually an example that Rambam gives himself, he says, imagine that a building falls over someone who sits under that building and kills that person, right? So natural laws are not supervised, meaning a building that is run down, there's, today we can use language like gravity and laws of physics will eventually collapse. And that is chaotic and unpredictable and unsupervised and uncontrolled. However, the man that sat under the building could have looked at the building before that man sat under it and see that it's run down and understand that by sitting under it, this person was taking a risk. So where supervision kicks in is with our ability to choose. So hashgacha pratit or private supervision is basically the intellect that we have received, which gives us the ability to protect ourselves. Okay, so that is, and by the way, it goes deeper than that, and it's a little more complex, but I feel like this is kind of the gist of how the Rambam views hashgacha. In a stark contrast to the Rambam, we have the Chassidut. So Chassidut, which let's say we would begin with the Baal Shem Tov, really radically believes in the opposite, whereas supervision or private supervision is everywhere, all the time, and on everyone, including every, speck of dust in nature. So I'm going to read for you from Keter Shem Tov. Keter Shem Tov is a collection of teachings from Baal Shem Tov that his students wrote. Okay, so it's not written by him, but a kind of summary of his teaching by his students. And it's written, הנה תנועת אחד הדשאים הצומח בעמקי היער ובאחד הערים הגבוהים ובעמקים היותר עמוקים אשר לא עבר שם איש. הנה לא זו בלבד תנועת הדשא הוא לימינו, לשמאלו, לפנים או לאחור, ובמשך כל ימי חייו הוא השגחה, אף על פי כן, הוא השגחה פרטית. So what it says is that even the movement of a blade of grass that moves with the wind in some remote forest that nobody sees, left and right, that movement of each and every blade of grass is supervised. And this is the meaning of hashgacha pratit. So, the idea of hashgacha is, of course, tough to grapple with. And, because if any person really thinks about it and considers the horror and the suffering that we are witnessing still today in our world, it's really hard to think, where is that supervision, where is that protection, individual or global, or collective supervision. It's one of the biggest problems with faith. Where does it exist? And over the years, I was thinking a lot about the Rambam's take of hashgacha, which I do find cool. But at the same time, I also have problems with it because I know so many people who are very intelligent, or should I say intellectuals, and are able to make good choices, and at the same time, this not prevented them from great suffering and from situations where they absolutely had no choice. Of course, in this light, the Hasidic approach is even more problematic. So therefore, I'd like to bring in a third approach, bringing a third person, which is newer, right? 19th, 20th century Jewish Rav and thinker, and that is Harav Kook. So the way Harav Kook saw supervision is really interesting. He believed, and I think we talked about it one time in this channel, that divine supervision is a divine trait that we all carry within us. And that trait is our strive for perfection. So if perfection is a godly trait, and we all carry that godly trait, we all constantly strive for it. That trait, that perfection is within each and every one of us, but it's hidden. And we are on a journey to reach it. And that strive for perfection as individuals and as society is what drives everything forward. That's the force behind everything. And it's also what protects us. Because in the end, even if we make so many mistakes and cause suffering and receive suffering and go in the wrong direction, trying to find the path to perfection, in the end, we are walking that path. And that eventually will harmonize into a different level of existence. Now, I know it sounds a little utopian, but that was Rav Kook's take on supervision. And he called that force, that drive, that striving for perfection, tzima'on. Tzima'on means thirst. And Rav Kook was also a poet. So I wanted to share with you, to conclude, a poem that is called The Thirst. And just to, so everyone can enjoy, I will take it section by section between Hebrew and English, and I hope you all enjoy it. הצימאון, The Thirst. ומתוך תוכי, מתוך מעייניי, הנני צריך תמיד לקחת את האוצרות הגנוזים. And from within me, from within my eyes, behold, I'm always obliged to take the hidden treasures. ובתוך תוכי אני קשור תמיד לאותו הצער הקדוש של אותה דרישת שלמות עליונה. And within me, I am always bound to it, the holy grief of the demand of that supreme perfection. ואין היא מתמלאת אף פעם, אין היא יכולה אף פעם להתמלות, כי זוהי התכונה, זו האריגה הנצחית. And there is no fulfillment, even once. It cannot ever be fulfilled, because this is the trait. It is it, the eternal weaving. שיסודה הוא צימאון, שיסודה צימאון האלוהי, אשר כל דבר אחר בעולם לא ירווה אותו אף פעם, כי אם המבוקש לבדו, כי אם הצימאון לבדו. The basis of which is thirst, the basis of which is the divine thirst, which no other thing in the world will ever satisfy, because only one who is asked for it, only the thirst. יחשף תמיד יותר ויותר ויוכר תמיד יותר ויותר, הוא בעצמו מתהפך ולמכור כל עונג למכון כל האדנים הרוחניים, לזיו השם. Will be more and more revealed and more recognized. It alone becomes the source of all pleasure, the source of all spiritual delights, the divine splendor. ולכן, תמיד אני שמח, אבל אף פעם לא מרוצה. And therefore, I am always happy, but never satisfied. Shabbat shalom.